I have never watched an anime before. Wow, the first line of my first video is a lie. I've got this YouTube thing down already. Hi, I'm Raptor, and I want to take you on a bit of a journey. You see, I used to really show no interest in anime. In fact, I was one of those people who thought that anime was weird and tried to avoid it whenever I could. But one day in my junior year of high school, I came across Razbowski's playthrough of Danganronpa V3. I was instantly drawn to the character writing and the pop-up book art style. Though, I will 100% admit that Razbowski's energy is what won me over in the first place. So, thanks Raz for being my introduction to anime. This wasn't nearly enough to get me interested into diving into the medium though. Throughout high school and college, a few pieces of anime-like media would cross my path and I would end up enjoying it, limited as they were. Really, it was only the Danganronpa series, Doki Doki Literature Club, again, thank you Razbowski, and that one time we watched Spirited Away in one of my college lectures. Over the past few years, I've gotten a bit less picky and started giving shows a chance that I wouldn't have before. Still, none of those were enough for me to really get interested into anime, and I never actually search out anime to watch. Despite calling Danganronpa my favorite game series at the time, I still had zero interest in actually diving into anime. That is, until I finally played the Persona series for the first time. Now, the story of how and why I fell in love with Persona deserves a whole video on its own, but for now just know this, the Persona series, especially Persona 4 Golden, finally opened my eyes to what anime could be. Needless to say, Persona is now my favorite game series, and Persona 4 Golden has locked up its place as my favorite game of all time. Oh my sweet summer child, you cannot come soon enough. And that's what leads us to today, where I asked ChatGPT to create an anime watch list for me as a beginner. Because, clearly, letting an AI dictate my emotional well-being for a few months was a great idea. After some questions about my tastes and some completely unnecessary ranting about my love for Persona and Danganronpa, it gave me a list of 9 series and movies that I should watch. So, sit back, relax, and welcome to my review, ranking, and probably a lot of ranting. All about my very first real adventure into anime, guided by an AI. Whoa, hold on. We've got something we need to cover first. Alright, before we jump into the actual list, I need to set some ground rules. This will be quick. Probably. As mentioned before, there were some anime that I had come across and watched to their completion before going into this watch list. This prologue is a rapid-fire lightning round going over all of these shows and movies. It'd feel dishonest if I immediately got into the shows on the list without even mentioning these, as they were truly my first experiences with anime. So, that's what this is, a baseline. Quick note though, I won't be including any series that are just animated retellings of video games. That means no Danganronpa the animation, Persona 4 the animation, and Persona 5 the animation. Yeah, real creative names, guys. These are being excluded because I don't want my love for the games to influence the rankings unfairly, and honestly, the games are just better. For the most part. Quick side tangent, even though I absolutely love Persona 4, it is my favorite game for a reason, I will happily admit that there are a few story nitpicks that the animated retelling fixes, especially the Golden anime and how it fixes some of my biggest complaints with Marie and Adachi's stories. Hoping to see some of these implemented into the remake. Also, yes, I have to say this, these rankings are completely subjective. While I may hit on some points about overall quality and how well the show is put together during the reviews, in the end, this is about how much I personally enjoyed each show. So just because I rank your favorite show low doesn't mean I'm calling it bad. Just means that I didn't enjoy it as much as I did some others on this list. You're welcome to disagree with me. In fact, I hope you do. It makes things a lot more fun. Oh, and of course there will be spoilers. Alright, boring part is over with. Let's begin.
Raptor, aren't you already breaking your own rules? You just said 15 seconds ago that you wouldn't be reviewing any anime based on video games.
That's you. That's what you're going to sound like if you finish that comment you're currently typing out. And to that, all I have to say is...
Clever girl.
I specifically said that I wouldn't include any adaptations of video games. And this is not an adaptation of a video game. Instead, this show serves as a follow-up and quasi-conclusion to the Danganronpa game franchise, or at least this part of it. So yeah, this is completely legal by the rules I set before. And besides, this is the first anime I ever sat down and watched properly. So it's staying in. My video, my rules.
Nobody's smart but me!
The series takes place almost immediately after the second game ends, following Makoto Naegi as he is forced to survive yet another killing game. However, the series changes the formula up just enough to make it feel completely fresh. This time, rather than forcing everyone to kill each other, there's said to only be one killer, one traitor amongst the group, and it could be anyone. Each character wears a wristband. After a set amount of time, everyone but the killer is put to sleep, and when they wake up, somebody is dead. Oh, and those same wristbands? They also have forbidden actions that are unique to each player. If broken, the result is instant death via poison. Honestly, the concept is incredible, and a perfect twist on the classic Danganronpa formula. It's got you on the edge of your seat the entire time, all while trying to wrap your head around who the killer is and how they are killing the survivors in seemingly impossible situations. It's all fantastic and creates amazing tension because you can easily make a case for each character being suspicious. That is, until the plot twist is revealed. There is no killer. The wristbands that everyone is wearing just wakes up whoever is closest to one of the multiple monitors around the building. The monitor then shows a mind-breaking video that drives each victim to end their own life. It's absolutely brilliant. That's the kind of creative, messed up storytelling that made me fall in love with Danganronpa in the first place. Sure, the character writing has dropped a bit in quality compared to the games, but that's more than made up for by one single scene. Let me paint the picture for you. Kyoko Kirigiri is the ultimate detective. She was one of the main characters in the first game and shows up in the second to play a major part in the finale. She's always been secretive, matter-of-fact, and generally pretty stoic. Even after the first game, after Makoto had done some work to help break down some of her walls, she was very much the same person. Now, here she is, once again putting her life on the line in a third killing game. She's been sticking close in a group with Makoto and Hina, two of the very few people she has genuinely grown to trust and even call friends after what they went through together in Hope's Peak during the first game. Now, the fourth time limit is rapidly approaching, meaning that the wristbands will put them all back to sleep very soon. Instead of desperately searching for the traitor or finding a way out of the game, she suggests that they all rest. So the group sits and just talks, reminiscing about little moments, even finding things to laugh about, a small glimmer of light in a show that has been nothing but dark and depressing up to this point. The camera pans to Kyoko removing her gloves, something that she's worn since we first met her and has never taken off before. To her, they represent her secretive nature. She hides her past from her friends, just as the gloves cover the scars of her past to the outside world. But now she's taking one of them off, and places her scarred hand onto Makoto's, the person who never gave up on her and who she has grown to trust the most. She makes him promise to never lose hope, no matter what comes in the future, and makes him promise to survive. Makoto gives his usual hopeful reply, stating he'll make sure everyone gets out alive exactly like he worked so hard to do in the first game. Then, the time limit goes off, and the wristbands put them to sleep. The next time we see the group, Makoto and Hina wake up, ready to continue their search for a way to stop the game. But Kyoko does not. Makoto, in absolute horror, turns her head to reveal the blood tear under her eye, undeniable proof that she had been poisoned because of her forbidden action. Finally, the camera pans down to reveal the text on her wristband, and the tragic nature of her forbidden action. Passing the fourth time limit with Makoto Naegi still alive. This is this is my favorite moment in the entire Danganronpa franchise. It's just beautiful, and it's a fantastic conclusion to the arc of Kyoko Kirigiri that started all the way back in the first game. A girl who was suspicious of everyone and would sacrifice anyone if it meant saving herself, ends with her allowing herself to die in order to give a friend a chance to live. This show is incredibly well written and thought out, from beginning to end. Tense, brutal, emotional, all perfectly complementing each other. It makes this an incredible experience that I have to give a 10 out of 10. Wait, what do you mean there's more to this show? Yeah, here's the thing. There's actually 2 arcs to this show. What I've been talking about up until now is the Future arc, which is a direct sequel to the second game and continues that story. That leaves the Despair arc, which takes place in the past before either of the Danganronpa games. It follows the cast of Danganronpa 2, which is my favorite cast of any of the games, except Mikon. I will not elaborate further. It tells the tale of the days leading up to the events of the games, and the transformation of these characters into the remnants of despair that we see them as in the second game. It's full of fun character interactions, cute character growth, and a heartwarming story about Chiaki and her blossoming relationship with Hajime. It sounds great, right? So, why do I sound like this arc just took my lunch money? Well, here's the thing. The way you're supposed to watch the show is to flip-flop between the Future arc and the Despair arc. So you'd watch episode 1 of the Future arc, then episode 1 of the Despair arc, then back to Future, then Despair, rinse, repeat. Do you see the problem with this? You go from high-stakes, brutal murder to slice-of-life classroom vibes with Chiaki smiling about bread. The tonal shift is violent. It's emotional whiplash in the worst way. I can see what they were going for, mentioning events in the Future arc, then immediately showing that event and giving context to it in the next Despair arc episode. It's a cool idea on paper, but in practice it just doesn't work because of how different the tones of the 2 arcs are. Even towards the end of the arc, when the story gets a lot darker and leads directly into the first game, all of this is happening as the Future arc begins to slow down on the gloominess and bloodshed. If you ask me, the way this should have been structured is to start with the Despair arc, go all the way through that, then do the Future arc. Now, that won't fix any of the issues I have with the Despair arc itself, but that immediately solves all of the tonal whiplash that the current structure gives. Honestly, I could probably make a whole separate video on why I dislike the Despair arc as much as I do, and maybe I will someday. The length of this section should tell you all you need to know about how much I love the Danganronpa franchise. I haven't even gotten to the ending yet, which is simultaneously great but broken at the exact same time, which is actually the perfect metaphor for the quality of this show as a whole. This show had so much potential, and the Future arc used that potential perfectly. If it was just the Future arc, I think this show would be an easy 10 out of 10. But the Despair arc really drags it down, and frankly, that's a very despair-filled way to end one of my favorite franchises. It defaults to the number 1 spot for now, since it is the only show on the list so far. But I would not expect it to stay there long. Whew. So I wanted to keep each of these prologue sections short. Just a minute or two, say what I think, drop a ranking, and move on to the actual watch list. You know, the entire reason you clicked on this video. But no, I had to start with Danganronpa. I hope this justifies why I called the channel Raptor Rants. The script of that section was much longer than what ended up in the video, and I wasn't even done. I had to seriously cut it down just to get even somewhat close to the time frame I wanted for each of these sections. Anyway, Spirited Away! It's going in number 1. What, you want me to say more? Of course it's gonna be number 1. It's a masterpiece whose only competition right now is the tonal nightmare that is Danganronpa 3. So yeah, if you want to hear more, go watch either of Shay Frillis' videos where he reviews this movie. I don't have much else to add to the discussion that hasn't already been said. Besides, after that beast of a Danganronpa section, I have some time to make up for. It's incredible, everyone knows it. Let's just move on. I'm gonna be real with you all. I don't even remember why this show caught my eye. I remember scrolling through Netflix one day and stopping on Komi Can't Communicate. I couldn't tell you why, but I let the preview play. It was a scene from the first episode where Komi drops her eraser and Tadano immediately spirals into an existential crisis over whether to pick it up or not. I found it funny and decided to give the show a chance. After watching the show all the way through, seeing how every plot point plays out, I can confidently say it was okay. Now, let me give the show its flowers first. The relationship between Tadano and Komi is great. They're absolutely adorable together, and it is extremely easy to root for them. I also really like the art style, especially the comedic shifts where it goes to a much simpler style with big eyes and small pupils. I audibly laughed whenever they switched that style. And while I admittedly think that another show you'll see later in this prologue used the gag a little more effectively, Komi still got some good mileage out of it. Additionally, the comedy in this show is alright. Not great, but not eye-rollingly bad either. Somewhat. Okay, let's get to the bad apples. The side characters are, to put it nicely, not very good. Osana is by far the best side character, but even they get a bit too over the top for me sometimes. Ren and Agari made me groan pretty much every time they were on screen. And the rest of the side characters, I struggle to even call them characters. On top of that, the writers seem to have a quota they had to meet for how much of each anime trope in the book shows up. It checks every box, and they're all shoved into the side characters. Every cliche you've ever heard of is represented here, and none of them really add anything. It was shows like these that made me want to avoid anime in the first place, a trope-heavy, exaggerated style that doesn't do much for me. So why did I watch Komi Can't Communicate all the way to completion? Really, it's just because of how strong the Tadano-Komi dynamic is. They carried the show just enough to keep me watching, but the show is far from great. I would not even really call it good. It's going at number 3. Going from one anime I accidentally stumbled upon on Netflix to another, A.I.C.O Incarnation. Unlike Komi, however, this show is actually really good. In fact, it is a great show. I'm going to keep this section short and sweet, and I won't spoil much because I genuinely want you, yes you, the one suffering through my rambling so far, to go watch the show. Is it the best anime ever? No, not by a long shot. But I'm going to rank it at number 2, sliding it between Spirited Away and Danganronpa 3. If you're into sci-fi mysteries, layered twists, and solid action, this one delivers. It's got a real adventure vibe, and it hooked me almost instantly. Add to that a surprisingly likable cast, some very cool visual concepts, and a few great wait, what just happened moments. A.I.C.O ended up being everything I was looking for at the time, and yet I never hear anyone talk about it. Definitely one I'll be revisiting soon, and you should absolutely check it out too if you haven't already seen it. All right, let's see what we got here. Part 5 title card plays. Pause for effect and for Death Note fans to catch their breath. Slowly realize the microphone has been recording you this entire time and pretend it wasn't in the script. Wait, oh, hey there. Death Note, am I right? In all seriousness, Death Note doesn't need any introductions. It is one of the most well-known and widely respected anime out there. Even before I got into Danganronpa, I knew about it. So a few years ago, I finally came around to watching it, and you know what? It deserves its reputation. Tight writing, thrilling twists, and watching Light and L try to outsmart each other was like watching two geniuses play mental 4D chess in real time. The showrunners knew what kind of story they were making and took full advantage of it. Even the slower episodes feel intentional, like the writers still wanted to say something meaningful. That's rare. Most shows treat their filler episodes like background noise and thus have a clear dip in quality. The animation is gorgeous, the story is intense, the pacing is deliberate, the characters are distinct and sharp. It's a masterclass in showmaking. And it's for that reason that I have absolutely no choice but to place Death Note at number 5. Yeah, let's go over the elephant in the room. I didn't lie about any of what I said above. This show is without a doubt extremely high in quality. The writing is solid, the animation is beautiful, and there's plenty of enjoyable characters both in the main cast and as supporters. But here is where we have to clearly define the differences between objective quality versus subjective enjoyment. By definition, objectivity is based entirely on facts and things that everyone can observe and agree on. Things like Spider-Verse's animation is stunning, the Earth is round, and Illumination makes cheap movies designed for the lowest common denominator and nobody else. Sure, some people might try to disagree, but there's plenty of data and evidence you can use to back up your claims. On the other hand, subjectivity is all about personal taste, feeling, and perspective. Things like preferring Pepsi over Coke, voting red versus blue, or rooting for the Ohio State Buckeyes over those cheaters up north. Signed, a diehard Buckeye fan. Why is all this important? Well, while I was watching Death Note, I could wholeheartedly acknowledge that the objective quality of the show is fantastic. But at the same time, I didn't find myself enjoying the show as much as I thought I would. Remember what I said earlier in the video? Also, yes, I have to say this, these rankings are completely subjective. While I may hit on some points about overall quality and how well the show is put together during the reviews, in the end, this is about how much I personally enjoyed each show. So just because I rank your favorite show low doesn't mean I'm calling it bad. It just means that I didn't enjoy it as much as I did some others on this list. Objectively, Death Note is brilliant. I stand by everything I said. But subjectively, I didn't really enjoy it. I have zero desire to rewatch it, and I am being 100% serious and honest about that. The concept is cool, and the constant mental battles between Light and L can be fun at times, but there's nothing to pull me back. I don't miss the characters, I don't miss the tension, it just didn't stick with me, and I am well aware that that puts me in the minority. Now, before you Death Note fans call me a hater in the comments, let me say that I did like the show. I do see why someone would call this anime their favorite. There's truthfully not much about the show that I can point to and say that I didn't like, but the show didn't stick with me either. One of the most important things to me when I am thinking about ranking these shows is how rewatchable it is to me personally. Not could I rewatch it, but do I want to rewatch it? I want to rewatch Danganronpa 3, even with its despair arc problems, because the future arc is just that strong. I want to rewatch Komi, even though I don't think it's very good, because Tadano and Komi have multiple moments together that I want to see again. The only reason I can think of why I'd ever want to revisit Death Note is to analyze its craft, not because I actually enjoyed it. And while that's absolutely a valid reason to rewatch something, that alone won't do it for me. You'll see very soon that my number one anime from the prologue has its flaws. Quite a few actually, and I'll absolutely point them out. Looking at it from an objective standpoint, Death Note is the better show, that is not up for debate. But from a subjective standpoint, it pales in comparison. And that's why, for now at least, it is firmly going at the bottom of my rankings list. Now that I undoubtedly have my name written in the book of multiple Death Note fans, let's move on to one of the more recent shows. And this one I literally only gained interest in because of the multiple clips that came up on my Twitter timeline. Alya sometimes hides her feelings in Russian. Man, that title is a mouthful. Kinda makes me miss the simplicity of names like Danganronpa the animation. Nah, not really. But I am going to refer to this show as just Alya from here on out, so half of this section isn't just me reading the entire title over and over again. I'm sure that won't become confusing later on.
Foreshadowing as a narrative device.
I think the best way I can describe this show is like this. It's Komi can't communicate, but does everything infinitely better. Well, almost everything. I think the romance between Tadano and Komi is just a little bit stronger than the romance between Kuze and Alya, but in every other aspect, Alya blows Komi out of the water. Side characters are actually fun to be around, it has an overarching plot with real stakes and emotional payoff, and plenty of character moments that have me laughing out loud. In fact, that's probably the biggest selling point of the show. The comedy hits. Where Komi's best jokes often just got a light exhale from me, Alya had me actually laughing most of the time. The recurring jokes earn their multiple appearances, the cringiness factor is used in a way that isn't off-putting, and the setup gets fitting payoffs that only enhance the build-up. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every joke in this show is a banger, but I will tell you that every single episode had multiple jokes that made me laugh even on rewatch. Really enjoyable characters, a nice romance plot, and the classic sibling rivalry trope done in a very compelling and unique way. If I had to pick some pain points, I'd say that there's a bit too much fan service at times. Now, before you call me a tourist, let me explain myself real quick. Fan service doesn't normally bother me much. Persona 4 is my favorite game of all time, and that's easily the most fan service heavy entry in the series, and most of the time it is inoffensive. But there are multiple moments sprinkled throughout episodes 1 and 2 specifically that took me out of the story for a few minutes, which stinks because they're often paired with genuinely great character moments and interactions. Also, I just skip over the last quarter of episode 9 on rewatches because it adds nothing to the story and is very clearly just purely there for fan service purposes. Though I will admit that there's a nice character moment in a later episode between Maria and Kuze where they reference the events of this part of the episode, so maybe it was necessary? I still skip it on rewatches. All in all, the comedy, the cast chemistry, and Kuze and Alya's dynamic, the character, not the show, makes Alya, the show, not the character, an easy number 1 pick for me. The person, not the Nintendo avatar. As I'm writing this, Season 2 has been announced for the 2026 release, and I am eagerly awaiting the continuation of the story. You can bet that I'll be watching it with excitement when it drops. Oh, and because I know there's going to be questions about this, yes, I did rank Alya over Spirited Away. Just like the Death Note section, I will happily admit that Spirited Away is better in overall quality. I just enjoy watching Alya more. I don't want to have to give the objective or subjective rant again. Got it? Cool. Moving on. I'm gonna be honest with you all, I purposefully left this anime until last. We've been going in no particular order through this prologue. If I was going order watched, this entry would have been second to appear right after Danganronpa. But A, the transition from Danganronpa to Spirited Away was just funnier. And B, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind going into this list that this show needed to be the last one. Spoiler alert, this show is going at number 1, and it's not particularly close. For as much as I enjoy watching and rewatching Alya, it never had a chance to compete against my favorite anime going into this video. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to properly introduce you to Darwin's Game. I remember rewatching this show 3 times in a row, back to back to back in the span of a week when I first came across it. Now, by anime standards, it's not exactly unique. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A high schooler with special abilities gets trapped in a death game. Wait, you're actually stopping me? I wasn't being serious about that. Let's just try this again. A high schooler with special abilities gets trapped in a death game. After making allies with a cast of colorful and equally powerful characters, he tries everything in his power to escape the game with his life. While some relish the chance to use the game as an excuse for their bloodlust, he rises above them all as a pacifist and wants to bring the game to an end by any means necessary. Does that sound like anything you can think of? Honestly, unoriginality of concept is not necessarily a bad thing. As long as the story itself is unique enough and it's not just a blatant ripoff, there's no reason to use that as a criticism. Now with that said, I love the concept behind this show. The entire functionality behind Darwin's Game is clever and really well thought out. These games are supposed to take place in the public? Add in a feature where once the battles start, they become invisible to the public eye until the match is over. What's the incentive to battle? It's more than just money and bloodlust. You can spend in-game credits on perks that span from extra weapons, to the ability to form a clan, to the ability to take your name completely off the list of challengers of other players. What about the bodies afterwards? They just teleport out of sight. The public is none the wiser and mistakes the aftermath as some kind of new street art. Those are just a few examples, but the writers really thought through the functionality of the game itself, and this is displayed in no better form than the sigil system. Once a player joins the game, they are assigned a sigil, a special power that they can use both inside and outside of the game. These range from super speed to telepathy to conjuring objects. Some of the sigils we see in the show are just incredibly cool, but the best part is that each and every one of them have some form of downside. Wong can teleport and cut through metal with his bare hands, but he has a maximum range of 10 meters, making him completely vulnerable to ranged weapons. Kaname can make any weapon he has touched appear from thin air, but the bigger and more powerful the weapon, the bigger tax it takes on his energy and stamina. Shuka can control anything with a thread-like structure. This includes chains, whips, and wire. However, these tend to be pretty frail, meaning that she is a sitting duck if those get broken. I frankly love the sigil system, and it's very well thought out. And that sigil system makes the action scenes even more engaging. The choreography and creativity of the combat is extremely well done and really creates a sort of cool factor that makes you excited for every punch thrown and every bullet shot. But what really makes the show shine is its cast. Kaname and Shuka have great chemistry. Shuka's obsessive yandere personalities bounce off of Kaname's generally pretty stoic and clear-minded persona extremely well. Rain, Ryuji, and Sui are all great supporting characters that only add to the dynamic of Kaname and Shuka. And then there's Wong. He is the type of main villain that is so easy to hate and root against, he goes all the way back around to becoming very likable. It definitely helps that his voice actor goes all out on his performance. Speaking of which, while I think the sub is fine and you should definitely choose whichever version you prefer, I highly recommend the dub for this one. Shuka and Wong's English voice actors absolutely sell the show, especially their final confrontation in the season finale. With that said, a few of the line deliveries can feel a bit clunky throughout the show, but I put that less on the voice actors and more on how the dialogue was written. Overall, it's pretty good, but there's plenty of moments that will leave you wondering if they couldn't try and maybe rewrite a sentence or two to flow better. And, unfortunately, the series leaves a lot of unanswered questions and mysteries that will never be solved. Why? Because it got cancelled after one season. I did some research and the best answer I could find is that both the show and manga were not well received at all in Japan, which I find to be a shame and makes me wonder if I'm a part of a very small group of Darwin's Game fans who want to see the series continue. Oh well, in the end, the fact that it was canned is a minor bump in the road. I still love the first and only season of Darwin's Game, and I still rewatch it even after going through ChatGPT's list. Warts and all, it ranks far above anything else I watched up to this point. Darwin's Game sets a high bar for the #1 spot on the list. Now, let's finally see if the AI can find something that will knock it off the throne. But that'll have to wait until next time. The runtime for this full video is looking to be somewhere between 3 and 4 hours, so I think it's in everyone's best interest that I break this into multiple parts. And by everyone, I of course mean me. Are you kidding me? I initially thought that this would be an hour and a half tops. Why am I doing this to myself? I started this all the way back in June, and at the time of this video's release, Thanksgiving is just 2 days away. It's been in limbo since September because of rewrites, re-recordings, and the greatest foe of them all. In all honesty, my biggest fear was editing because I am a perfectionist and felt I didn't have the skills to put out a good product. So I kept putting it off and instead going back to editing and re-recording the scripts until it just got too late and I had to start working on the video itself. Was what I put out today any good? I don't know. I'll leave that for you to decide. I can't tell you how last minute a lot of the decisions in this video were. Even this avatar I've been using came into existence like 2 weeks ago. Originally, I was just going to record myself in front of a green screen until this idea popped in my head. And since I couldn't afford to pay a professional artist, I just threw a few things together in Photoshop and figured the purposeful roughness of them would up their charm a bit. I was even making brand new ones throughout the process of editing the video as new ideas popped into my head. Personally, I like them, even if some of them came out better than others. Sorry, I know, I'm rambling again. Maybe I should have called this channel Raptor Rambles instead. Anyway, here's the rankings as they stand now. We've got 9 more to go, and by the end of this, all 16 of those slots will be filled. The plan is to release 2 more parts, then a full video that combines each of the parts into a full 3 to 4 hour long special. I might even clean up some of the editing and mistakes in this first video that I just didn't have time to fix before releasing it. For example, Makoto very clearly doesn't turn Kyoko's head. He instead lifts up her wrist. That's an example of my goldfish level memory just coming to the surface, so I might try and clean little things like that up. Anyway, if you're following along, part 2 will go over Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, Real Life, Astra Lost in Space, Rascal Does Not Dream of a Dreaming Girl, and Your Lie in April. Expect that video to come out either late January or sometime in February, assuming that everything goes to plan, of which I already have a great track record on this project. But that's all for now, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, I really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great day, God bless, and I will see you next time. I am 100% stealing this idea from my fellow Eldar simp, Pancreas No Work, but screw it. I like the idea of putting random thoughts that didn't fit anywhere in the script at the end when some people have undoubtedly left. So I'm doing it too. On that note, if there are any Death Note fans still watching, don't you worry. I can personally promise you that your show will not be 16th at the end of this. I should know. I already have the final rankings finished, and I would never lie to you. You just have to take my word for it and trust that Death Note won't be at the bottom in the end. But there's only one way for you to find out. So I'll see you in the next one.